Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learnings. I'm delighted to be joined today by Silas J Lees, who is the CEO of Wiggywam, transforming property transactions. This is in the latest series of what I'm doing about trying to find ways of speeding up our lovely home buying process in the UK. Silas was kind enough to reach out to me after one of my podcasts that I did with Melanie, I believe, um, and thought I would get you along
Thank
because
you.
at least I know I've got one other listener. So thank you very much. And I know you've got a 130-page white paper review of our housing market. Um, and a seven-pledge manifesto for reform and what needs fixing, which I'm sure is quite a lot. So, first of all, before we go into all of that, thanks for being a guest. And secondly, how have you become involved in this and making a difference? Because we certainly need a difference in this country.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thank you for taking me up on my invitation to become a guest, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So, my background, just for context and all this, is coming up for about 30 years in the property world. Started off as an estate agent, and actually really enjoyed the role. It was a great opportunity to go out and meet people, see their houses, pet the dog, have a nice conversation, and then obviously get the listing, go on to market the property, and have many sort of successful sales as a result. And during that process, I was told by my family that I needed a profession. So, trained to become at the same time a building surveyor. I just didn't want to go to university at the time, so I ended up doing day release. And that was quite a difficult task because I was reflecting on this the other day when I realized that my final year at university was the final year, plus doing my dissertation, plus being a full-time estate agent, and we were also renovating a house at the time. So it was literally a house with no electricity. So I remember typing my dissertation at like 2 o'clock in the morning and having to go and fill the generator up with fuel just so that I could keep working into the night. But that aside, I then qualified as a surveyor and went back into a state agency for a short time just before the housing market crash in 2008. And what I'd noticed as a result of that, there was an event that I attended as a to learn about property investment. I'd read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting to learn about property because it's my background. I feel like I'll know it. And I walked into that room over the course of the weekend, and I was taught so much stuff that I thought, well, I've not come across this in my career in estate agency or surveying, and it was just quite transformational. And what I learned is that as an investor, you can transact deals within literally days that is taking us now months and months and months to try and get through to completion. And so there was a sort of shift in mindset that occurred. And I spent a good sort of 7 years or so on the road, going around the country, interviewing lots of different estate agents in order to help people to start, build, and grow their own property portfolio. And I noticed sort of a lot of sort of commonalities coming up time and time again, which is that there was always one good estate agent or one good letting agent in an area, and they seemed to know more than most, and they were the ones that could actually guide us through actually, the property journey. So that was interesting. But what was going on in the background, of course, is transaction times were just getting longer and longer and longer. And that's what's frustrated me is that as an investor, you can put stuff through very quickly, but when it comes to buying and selling your most expensive asset, it just seems to be incredibly hard work. So that's what we've tasked ourselves with, is shortening those transaction times.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to that, but I'm just curious to know a few things actually
Please do.
from what you said. And we had a similar sort of path actually,
Right.
because I did correspondence course,
Okay.
and I also did day release. I didn't do a dissertation, mind you,
Right.
but I did qualify as a charter surveyor, and it took me about 6 years.
Right.
Um, and I only came to use it when I had, let's say, I didn't agree with surveyors with their down valuations, and
Hmm.
it helped me being a charter surveyor. I think they used to help hate me with some of the prices that I was achieving,
Right.
but they listened to me in those days.
Hmm.
So I'm just curious to know though, when you went around and you said that you were in various different towns, you found one good agent, one good letting agent.
Right.
What makes a good estate agent?
That's such a great question, and I don't think it's necessarily one thing, but knowing what you're actually knowing your subject matter is incredibly important. So I cannot tell you the amount of viewings that we would go on where there was a key holder that turned up, did not know a single thing about the property, didn't know anything about the seller's circumstances, didn't know why the property was for sale. You were always deflected back to somebody in the office, who you would then speak to, who then didn't know anything about the property. And so this cycle went on and on and on. It used to drive us mad because you think, well, we're here. Yes, we're not going to offer full market value, but we can move quickly if that aligns with the seller's circumstances. And I think a lot of agents miss a trick here. Some of the most successful estate agents that I've seen have grown massively because they've got a business, a side business, if you like, that supports property investors. They find the deal, they renovate it, they let it out for them, and then they manage the tenancy. And so you build a much closer connection than just a one-off sale, which a lot of agents are doing. So I think knowing what you're talking about is good. Having some experience in investing is also good, not just textbook knowledge, but actually having done it. Um, and there are so many other elements that I could go into. We talk about trust, we talk about integrity, but I think that those are buzzwords that a lot of people have coined and don't really act in alignment with them. I One of the things that came out of our white paper was the impact on referral fees in the marketplace, and this is will make me probably very unpopular with your audience, but it needs to be said: 59% of consumers do not know that they're paying referral fees, and I'm all up for estate agents creating a business model that works for them. The problem that I see with referral fees is the impact it has on the conveyancers. When the profit is sucked out of a job, what incentive does a solicitor have to move faster? Okay. And so what is happening behind the scenes in law firms, and one of the things I omitted from my story is that I spent 4 years behind the scenes in law firms trying to acquire them, to understand why conveyancing was taking so long. And so what happens is the profit on a job drops by £300 because that referral fee is essentially their profit that they're paying out. And so a conveyancer, they're not really business people with respect. So they take on more and more case files because they think higher volume equals more profit, right? So you end up in a situation where conveyancers are taking on 100, 200, I've heard up to 300 case files per conveyancer. And it's just impossible to get anything done. They're spending 80% of their time giving updates. So they've got 1 day a week to actually do any work. And so you've got this situation where if you look at what's happening in timelines, they're getting more and more expanded, and agents are sacrificing a 3.5 grand average fee, shall we say, for a £300 referral fee that they may or may not get if the deal doesn't complete. And that's the madness of it. And so when we started to look at the numbers, my passionate belief that there is a figure of about 1.37 billion that's thrown around that consumers lose as a result of failed transactions. If you look at the wider economic picture within the housing market, I believe estate agents are losing about £5.42 billion a year in unclaimed commission. And that's on deals that have fallen through, but properties that are listed and then taken off the market because they haven't sold. We've seen the statistics of agents selling 1 in every 2 properties that they list. It would make an enormous difference to the estate agency profession if they were selling the majority of what was actually being listed. And that only happens, I think, with an upskilling of the individual to allow them to achieve much better results as a result.
That's a scary number. Do you want to say that number again?
So our research pointed to the estate agency industry as a whole is walking away from £5.42 billion a year in unclaimed commissions. And that's not listing any more properties that are currently being listed. It's actually just the amount of business that walks away because the properties haven't sold, plus the high fall through rate of transactions. So the reason I feel that that figure is relevant to mention, you and I are probably from kindred spirits. We feel that estate agents should be earning more, or should we say good estate agents should be earning more money. And we have this perverse situation where we've got the bad actors in the market who are pulling the reputation of all estate agents down. And that's a situation that I find unpalatable. If I can share a quick personal story. My father, when he was in his sort of later years, he got diagnosed with cancer, and I was trying to help him on that journey. And one of the things he said to me in frustration was, "What would you know? You're just an estate agent." And at that point, I hadn't been an estate agent for probably 10 years or more. And that's not the point. The point is that was the insult that was thrown in my direction. And I thought, how mad is that you can have all this knowledge and all this experience, and I've been speaking internationally at that point. Um, and yet the one thing that somebody comes back to is a past of being an estate agent that's now seen as an insult. And I hate that for the profession. I genuinely think estate agents deserve more. I think they need to deserve to earn more. I think a branch manager salary needs to be more than a minimum wage employed position, quite frankly. And that's why I'm passionate about the value's already there. It's just, how do estate agents realize it?
Okay. How do agents then change that perception? Because, wherever you go, estate agents have got a bad name, rightly so. I think there's only, and I've gone on record to say this, that there's only 5% of decent estate agents in the UK.
Right,
I think the rest are absolutely horrendous.
right.
Um, there's no stay in touch policy. They're way too transactional. There's no relationship and building that.
Yep,
You talked about a property investor. A property investor or a landlord. Once an estate letting agent, if they're good, that letting agent should be, using them. They've got to do something disastrously wrong, to lose a landlord,
mhm,
whereas on sales side, and I get the fact that people, move maybe every 7 years, 20 years, whatever the number is. I get that. But, why not stay in contact? Why not have the annual health check, give people, as you said, it is people's tax-free asset, and we should be an asset manager in a way,
yeah,
to
right.
help them appreciate that and give them ideas. And when they do come to sell, they pay us a fee that we fully deserve, which is not 1%, it is 2%, or
Correct.
maybe more if you look, across Europe and overseas. So, but from your point of view, how can agents, change that reputation, that perception? Because that will be a start. And I know obviously we've got maybe Roper coming in, maybe Roper not coming in. Who knows? But let's assume one day, maybe whilst we're both still alive, that will come in, but you never know. So, your thoughts on that and changing the perception?
Okay, that's a really expansive question, but I'll hit on some of the core points if I may. So the question I ask everybody is, if people do not trust estate agents and the market data suggests that they do not, then why call yourself an estate agent? That's the first core point to me. And this is what came off the back of the research within the white paper, was that we needed to give, or the industry needs to give the public a trusted yardstick to differentiate between the best of the best and the bad actors. When everybody is commoditized, and if you look at what's happened across the industry, estate agency and conveyancing and mortgage advice has literally become commoditized. You're all on the same platform. You're all offering the same kind of service as far as the consumer is concerned. So the only variable is price. What do I pay to access that service? So that is the biggest hurdle that agents face, is getting out of that commoditization cage, as my friend Chris Arnold talks about. You have to step out of that. And the underlying fear that I see in the industry is that you can't sell houses without Rightmove. And so agents are tied to this one platform that is seen as the biggest lead generator, seen as the biggest source of sales. When you start to question the data, that probably doesn't add up, especially when you look at the fact that even with Rightmove, people are only selling one in every two houses. So that myth doesn't stand to scrutiny. But to pull out of that commoditization cage, you have to step into a new identity, as Tony Robbins would talk about. And if the identity of an estate agency is somebody who's untrustworthy, you've then got to work harder to establish a new identity. And this is the reason why we've established the Maverick Movement, because I believe that the best estate agents are mavericks. They're not people who think along traditional lines and are commoditized. They have to be a better level. Now, that comes with training and education. But if you're already behind the eight ball, to use an American expression, you're untrusted to begin with, you have to do everything in your power to establish higher levels of authority. And I know this is something that Chris Webb talks about, but I passionately believe one of the biggest things you can do as an estate agent is to write a book. And it's not just the fact that you're a published author, it's the writing process that will win you the clients that you want, especially if you're starting out afresh. The beautiful part about that book, of course, is that it's a marketing asset that continues to sell you beyond the initial 1 hour sit down chat over the valuation. And I think this is where having stacking that authority, not just in the book, but in the thought leadership pieces in your area, doing things differently, going back in a lot of ways. I know you're a fan of this, Stephen, around the whole idea of doing the basics incredibly well. And I think technology hasn't helped. You know, you're familiar with the old days where we used to have the hot box and we used to know exactly what our applicants wanted, and we would speak to them on a regular basis. Now that all sits inside a CRM system that's largely forgotten about, unless you're from the old school and you're used to doing that process. And so I think technology hasn't helped us in a lot of ways. I think it's put a barrier between us and the consumer. But if approached in the right way, with a mindset that is, I'm going to deliver the absolute best results for my client, that is what separates you from the herd, in my humble opinion. And it does come down to knowing, really what you're talking about.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, let's talk about the white paper.
Okay,
So, how did it come about, and who was involved in that, please?
great question. So one of the things I'm a big fan of is questioning the basic assumptions. And over time, I had a bit of an awakening, if I can use that expression, around about 2015 as part of my journey. And that awakening taught me to question the very basic assumptions that society holds dear day in, day out. And so it originally started, I believe, as a look into. I got into a bit of an online spat, if you want the full story, around referral fees with an agent, and they were telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about, and I thought, well, I'm pretty convinced that I do. So let's research this topic and come back with the data. And as I started to research, more and more things started to come out of the woodwork, and I thought, oh, okay, so how do we find out more of what's actually going on within the wider marketplace? Why are housing transactions taking so long? Not just the headlines, but what's actually going on beneath the surface. As I mentioned, this higher caseload that conveyancers are taking on. And then there was this whole idea of the government reform coming in, and I thought, are the people that are advising the government, do they actually know what they're talking about? Or are we just accepting that these councils or these bodies have been established to advise the government, but do they actually understand the process? And when you started to look at some of those basic assumptions, they just don't hold up. And so it kind of led me on this bit of a. I'll be honest, I got into a right mess about 4 or 5. Well, actually, probably a bit longer than that. About 7 or 8 months ago, I got into a real mess with it all because there was data coming out of everywhere, and it was like, how do we tile this together and bring it in? And so, yeah, there was a big research project with myself, my co-founder Christine. She's an ex HMRC data specialist, and we pulled the numbers. Verified from a number of different sources. We did have a little bit of help from AI, but AI didn't write the thing, but there was some checking and verification of some of the numbers. And yeah, that was what led to the full publication of it all.
And so, how did you go about it and get all the information out there?
So the research process was, again, starting with an assumption. So um, everything that the industry holds dear, as I mentioned, can you sell houses without a certain property portal? Can you uh, deliver a higher level of service whilst being called an estate agent? There were a number of different factors that we looked at, testing those hypotheses, and then it was a case of reading various different news outlets. So what you'll hear on Pi or Eat could be a very different conversation from a conveyancer's perspective, and also from a mortgage broker's perspective. So when you start to dig into those other professions, you see a more holistic picture rather than just keeping it within the silo of a state agency. And I think that's incredibly important. So that was part of the research, was looking at things from different angles across different professions to understand the entire impact of what's actually going on in the market.
So, I suppose one of my biggest frustrations is looking on LinkedIn.
Yep.
You get various different parties in the industry slagging off, for better word, each other.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, I'm looking to sell my property, I'm looking to buy my, and these are all the professionals that are going to help me. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
It's incredibly valid, the point you raise there. It really is.
So, seven pledges. So
Mhm.
obviously you spoke about referral fees. What are the other six, please?
So we believe fundamentally that transactions should take no longer than about 6 to 8 weeks. Okay. And that's what it was when I was an estate agent pretty much before the internet. So we would have a situation where we'd walk the memorandum of sale down to the solicitor's office, and you would just have that conversation with them, hand over the memorandum of sale, and then 6 weeks later, we never did any sales chasing, or if we did, it was maybe a couple of phone calls and contracts exchanged. So the fact that this is now taking 20 plus weeks is bizarre, and I don't think there's any need for it. So we believe in solving that problem through upfront information, material information, and not just a tick box exercise. What is a frustration for me, Stephen, taking that social media analogy a step further, is I'm seeing agents trying to tick a box, or conveyancers trying to tick a box where they say, "Oh, I'm material information compliant," but that what they're implementing is a very watered down solution, and it doesn't really advance the deal any further forward. So you have to have, in my mind, the upfront material information as full disclosure and transparency, because ultimately the agent needs to know, can I sell this property and get paid on it? There are so many times when an agent will list a property and they can't actually get paid because there's a fault in the title, or there's some other obscure issue that's going to raise its head. So upfront information is one of our standards. Establishing the Maverick Movement is another. The banning of referral fees is another part that we're very, very passionate about. I know that is uncomfortable, but I believe if true reform is going to happen in the marketplace, it has to be done in a transparent and profitable way. And agents will say to me, "Well, if you're banning referral fees, how can it be more profitable?" And to your point, you have to dress up a state agency in a way that is delivers ultimate value to the client, and be able to be charging for it. And what I see, one of the biggest frustrations for me is seeing an estate agent pitching a valuation figure and a take it or leave it option on the fee. This is what we charge. I have yet to see one single estate agent that I've interacted with where they say, "Oh, we offer a tiered suite of services depending upon what you want, bronze, silver, gold."
Okay,
Nobody really.
I think in fairness to estate agents now, that's happening with a flexi fee. So I think it is happening more, and I'm going to come back to you on the other bits, but I just want to share something because on the point about taking referral fees,
Yep.
and I'm going back to my agency days.
Hmm.
Um, so I had a conveyancer that would come in every week. You know, we want to pay you referral fees. We want to pay you referral fees. We want to pay. And for me, actually, the most important person isn't the estate agent. So I'm going to upset loads of people now. It's a consumer. It's a person that's buying. It's a person that's selling. And I would say, look, I'm happy to give you my business. That's fine. I'm happy to recommend you, but
Yep.
I want to know that you will give me your mobile number. You will pick up the phone to me. And if I want something in a nice way, you know, I'm there to help you. I'm there to help you and support you throughout the transaction. There are times where I'm going to get a call from my seller, buyer, whatever it is, that I need you to pick up the phone to me.
Yep.
As long as you do that, and then I know that I've got more control of the sale and I've got that personal relationship,
Mhm.
that's going to make a big difference to me. Now, I ended up having exchanges on a Sunday with this person. I ended
Wow.
up having up exchanges at 10 o'clock at night
Right.
because we had a relationship and it made it a lot easier. On the
Right.
flip side, I dealt with loads of, excuse my language, everybody, shit solicitors um, who were horrendous. However, when they got the transaction through, they always got a thank you card from me.
Right.
And then that thank you card, it would say, I'm really sorry I've been a pain in the backside. I really appreciate you getting the sale through. Now, these people didn't pick up the phone. They never answered an email. They did absolutely nothing. I'm sure everybody who's listening and watching this would agree with that. There's quite a few, let's not say everybody and tar everybody with the same brush. I then started to get phone calls from these solicitors to say, in my 40 years, I've never had a thank you card. Now, the chances are you're going to deal with that solicitor again. And guess what happened? Oh, Stephen, that's great. And all of a sudden they pick the call up, they deal with me, they do things. So is a referral fee necessary? No. I understand from an agency point of view, it's a revenue generator, so that's fine. But your point, and to go back to that, whether it was 5 billion, I think it was, or which is just the most ridiculous, crazy number, and will make a great heading for any podcast out there. Um, Actually, isn't it more important, and I think you made the point, isn't it more important that you get the sale through than having and you said a £3,500 fee rather than a £300 referral fee? So actually, if you're working on all your numbers and instead of your one and two, you're getting to 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 going through, you're going to be much better off. So, in my humble opinion, it's an absolute no-brainer whatsoever. So that's me off my soapbox. Right. So we got referral fee 6 to 8 weeks, Maverick movement, which I want to come back into
Please do.
and discuss, and what your other four are, please.
No problem. So we believe, coming back to the numbers, we can deliver through the Maverick Movement about 10 billion pounds a year in economic value. Partly through what we just touched on with the estate agency fees being elevated, partly through slashing the fall through rate of property deals, but also there's an underlying factor here which most people don't realise, and particularly the banking industry and finance industry hasn't cottoned onto, is that the cost or the lost opportunity that the lenders have is absolutely eye-watering. We estimated somewhere between about 50 and 100 billion a year in lost lending opportunity, which is absolutely transformational, bearing in mind that Lloyds Bank is the biggest lender in the country at 47 billion that they did in lending last year. So there is a huge opportunity for lenders to get involved. But the one challenge I have with that is that I heard recently that Lloyds particularly had spent £250 million trying to improve the timeline to exchange. And after £250 million spend, they reduced the timeline by 4 days. And the problem is because you've got all of these different parties all working in silos, all siloed communication spread across email, WhatsApp, etc. It needs to be centralized all in one place. And that is one of the biggest frustrations and challenges I think that estate agents face. So we believe off the back of that, there's £10 billion worth of economic improvement that can be delivered. We also believe in empowering the consumer through what we're calling the Maverick Movers Club. So home buyers and sellers that are looking to move, rather than just being a regular buyer or seller, you become part of the Maverick Movers Club. And within that, you're given all the support and training that you need to be able to spot a good professional from a bad actor. Really important. I've sort of tried to download 30 odd years of in the trenches experience into books, into video training courses, etc., to really empower people and to take away the fear. One of the stats that came up in the white paper was 40% of first time buyers won't even enter the market because they are absolutely terrified of enduring this process. And I can understand why. And a lot of lenders, again, on social media are talking about we're here to help first-time buyers onto the property ladder. But when I ask them the question, what are you actually doing to help this 40% that won't even step on the ladder or won't even get involved in the process, none of them have got an answer. And I think education goes a long way, but having a true expert to hold your hand throughout the entire process is absolutely vital. So that's what we believe. Another pledge that we have is collaboration over disruption. So we don't want to come into the industry and disrupt it and really tear it all apart. It's not really the objective. The objective is to empower and deliver greater value to estate agents, to conveyancers, to mortgage advisors, so people can genuinely get paid what they're worth. The money's there, the value's there. It's just about how it's realised, and it's never going to be realised if all we do is push more volume through a race to the bottom on fees model. It's just never going to happen. So that's, I think, pretty much in a nutshell, everything that we've pledged as far as the Maverick Movement is concerned. I think there was a second part to your question. Forgive me, it slipped my brain, but that's essentially what we want to deliver into the marketplace, and it is about leading reform without the need for more government red tape. That's my biggest concern at the moment. We have advisors that don't really know what they're talking about, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's a fact. The government is listening to them. They're not collecting the data. By the way, this has apparently been admitted very recently, that the government departments that are proposing home buying reform are not collecting the data around the reasons why house sales actually fall through, or why everything takes so long. They're relying upon a bunch of advisors who don't know what they're talking about. I believe you say it's 5% of what you describe as maverick estate agents in the market. That same percentage will exist within conveyancing and within mortgage advice. For me, it's building the flagship with those people leading the reform, so that we can do it profitably, so that we can do it without the need for government red tape, which comes with compliance, which comes with cost. There was the second part to your question was around industry qualifications. I have big problems with things that are unfolding in the marketplace right now, where we're seeing the largest estate agency body getting closer to the largest supplier in the industry, and then putting a disgraced MP on stage, giving them a large fee for that. That's fine. If that's your business model, that's what you want to do, all well and good. But it just seems to me a remarkable coincidence that we now have the disgraced MP back as a housing minister, who may or may not then instigate that estate agents all need to be qualified. That's a conspiracy theorist part of me that's just looking at that going, that seems a rather convenient arrangement. And the problem is, in that model, it just continues to commoditize everything. So estate agents are all qualified, or they're all licensed, or whatever that model looks like. So what? Does it mean that the transaction will go faster? I don't think it will. Is it going to realize more value for the seller of the property? Again, I don't think it will, because they're not being trained in the areas that you and I both know. If they were given that influence, they'd be able to go and run with it, because that new knowledge opens up a new set of eyes to look at a property and say, am I better off selling this to a homeowner, or am I better off selling this to a developer for redevelopment, or am I better off selling it to an investor who's going to turn it into HMO or whatever? All of those things can help realize more value. But if you don't know those basics, you can't deliver that to the client.
How's it going to happen?
Well, our view, quite honestly, and what we're finding a little bit of successes with right now, is appealing to those people who are sitting there in quiet frustration, that they know this whole situation doesn't have to be the way it is at the moment. They want to see their clients served at a better level, at a higher level, and get those deals through faster. They just don't yet have the framework to work within. And that's really what we're trying to offer them. I'm not saying we've got everything sorted out. I'm not saying that we know exactly all the answers, but I think that's the point. The problem with government regulation is it's a one size fits all. What is needed with any change is a version 1.0 model that is then improved on feedback from the market, and that's what we're trying to offer with the Mavericks. Is these are the best working practices right now. Go and implement. Come back in 6 months' time and tell us what's happened. What feedback are we getting from the marketplace? But I don't think it's that difficult a problem to solve. It just requires will.
Okay, so who have you got? I don't know if you can name names, but case studies are really important. So
Correct.
if you got case studies that can say, you know what, we've worked with X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
20 weeks is now down to 6, 8 weeks.
Yep.
Then it's a lot easier to go and sell something. So
Correct. Yep. Yep.
what have you done? What can you help people? How can you demonstrate it? And then we
Fantastic.
can talk about how people can use your platform to make a difference.
For sure. So there's a couple of elements to this. One is direct stuff that we've actually helped agents deliver through. I don't really want to talk about coaching and mentoring. It's really just somebody coming to me for help, and I'm saying, okay, well, this is the way I see it. Go and do that. I had one agent that came to me. She was prepared to do the work, which you probably experience this, Stephen, with respect. You get people that come to you, they say that they want help, but then you give them the solutions and they don't implement, and that's the bit where everything falls over. She took my knowledge and advice, went out, and within 1 week she won £12.5 million worth of property as instructions. And that's not doing anything necessarily particularly complicated. It's just actually going out there and doing the work. Now, independent to what we're doing, there are a bunch of Mavericks that have come forward. We will be making announcements over the course of the next probably 6 to 8 weeks of the people that are actually joining the movement and what the results that they're actually achieving as a result, independently of what we've actually created. I'm already seeing good solicitors and good people working alongside solicitors and estate agents, bringing the sale process down to 8 to 10 weeks already. Those are not the results that we've created. They're outside of what we're doing. But my view is, well, when you bring the collective together, you're going to see those timelines naturally fall. So, yeah, I'm quite encouraged by the initial results. Um, I, there's something else that I want to say, but I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch. So you forgive me for not going down that road. But I think the change is coming, and change will happen a lot faster than people realize when good people work together.
Okay, so if you had to summarize what the Maverick movement is in 3 sentences, put you on the spot, what would it be?
So our signature tagline, if you like, is the best of the best under one digital roof with one united mission, which is to get Britain moving. And that's literally what we believe the Maverick movement is all about. It's and when I say the best of the best, people think, well, I'm not the best of the best, therefore I can't be part of that. And that's not really what we're looking for. It's the aspiration to be that best of the best. The knowledge, training, support is all there, and the processes are not particularly complicated. It's just about how you go into that initial interaction. And in my view, as Robert May talks about, it comes from that initial conversation when you're sat in the sitting room with the client. That's the turning point for many people. And there is that process again has been commoditized to the point where there is very little difference to choose between the three agents that sit there. With a few tweaks, that process becomes, in my view, much more valuable to the client and the agent. And from that point forward, I think if agents aren't having that honest conversation about how much of a mess it is trying to move home right now, that is working against them when they get to the point of issuing the memorandum of sale. My client's
Okay,
going through 20 odd weeks as
so
well.
out of curiosity,
Mhm.
how does one become a maverick? Is one approaching them, or do you approach them, or do they approach you?
Okay, great question, and allow me to elaborate a little bit on the front end with the process. So we don't offer. This is not a participation trophy. This is not a you've got to be part of the clique to be part of it. I don't believe that. A maverick, by very definition, does not go along with the status quo. So we expect to be challenged as a result. Um, the first step in all of this is an application. So they have to apply to join. It's not something that we will just hand out for in exchange for a membership fee each year. We're not interested in that. We only want the good people coming forward. We cannot afford to let bad actors into the movement at all, because it just erodes trust. It undermines everybody else who's part of it. So the application is the first process. They then go through an interview, which is about an hour long, and we're looking for commonalities around values alignment to deliver excellence to the consumer. That's really what we're looking for, without giving too much of the game away. After that, they receive either a letter of acceptance or a letter of thanks but no thanks, as it were, or maybe thanks but we don't think you're quite ready. Do this, 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 and this, and then reapply in 6 months' time. And then after that, there is a formal induction process. The only way I can liken that is a bit like when somebody is knighted or receives an OBE or whatever. There is an induction process to create that authority, and I think that's really important, and doesn't exist, as far as I'm aware, within the wider property community. But it's also about bringing really, really good people together who can deliver that knowledge and expertise and training to the agents. I think a lot of agents are struggling, particularly in the current market. I read statistics that suggest about a third of all estate agents are in significant financial difficulty. Some of that will be self-imposed. For others, I think it's a result of struggling with a market that's been pretty suppressed for the last 12 months. And so empowering them to move forward, but it is that collaboration element together, again, bringing those really good trainers, really good mentors, coaches. I don't know it all. I'm humble enough to say that I really don't know it all. I've got a few ideas that I've seen work, but there are other ways that we can get this whole thing moving. And that's really what it's about, is bringing those great minds together to empower the estate agent or the conveyancer to deliver excellence to the consumer. And that's the bit that I'm quite excited about.
Okay, so is it a collaboration? The Mavericks are estate agents, financial advisors, lenders, and conveyancers.
Correct. Correct. So we're attacking the problem from all angles, whereas at the moment, what I see quite often, particularly that, so there's this whole maddening thing about digitization is going to solve the property journey. Not a chance.
Made it
Um,
longer.
say again, sorry.
Made it longer so
Yeah.
far.
Well, this is true, and this sounds odd from somebody who's in a technology business, but how much has technology really helped us advance our lives, or are we just creating an awful lot of work that could actually be shortcut in the process? The bit that I come back to, you've seen this as well, Steve, I'm sure, where the exchange of contracts process I thought was a big, long, complicated thing, and I actually witnessed a solicitor exchange contracts on a deal that I was working on, and it was a 30-second phone call, and I was was shocked. I said, for years I've been told, oh, we've got to exchange contracts. It's this, and it's this all this mystique around it. You think you can get the old scroll out and then the quill and everybody signs it and it's all witness. And it was this 30-second phone call. I thought, my goodness me, how much the industry hoodwinks everybody else that's going on within it. So you have to attack this problem from all angles. Conveyancers are very, very, very much fed up of being given the blame for the slowdown in the process. Nobody's looking at the fact that that industry has been had so much red tape put on it, so many more acts and statutes and pieces of legislation, and the same people advising the government want more legislation, but now on the front end for estate agents. And I'm sitting there going, how is nobody else not seeing this? That you've flooded conveyancers with more legislation, and is it any wonder the process is taking longer? And now you want to do the same with estate agents, who are
Yeah.
salespeople who naturally rebel against that sort of thing. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and we won't talk about the unintended consequences of a Renters' Right Act either then.
Well, there we are. So government involvement, to my mind, rarely cures the problem that it's trying to solve. In fact, it makes matters worse. And I really rebel against this. This might sound a very strange thing to say, but I'm really passionate about estate agency. For whatever reason, it was my first choice of career. I love the job. I love the role. I love what it was all about. I see the difference it can make to people's lives when you get it right. And there's a lot of people that probably aren't getting it right, or as right as it could be. And so I don't know any other industry really that could have such a massive impact on somebody's next 20 years of their life. I've sat with this for a while. I don't know any other industry that could have that impact. And yet it's one of the most looked down on professions. The job title is almost an insult. And it's wrong, and it needs to change. And none of the bodies that I can see are we're all trying. People like you and I are trying to help advance it, but none of the bodies that have the power or the membership or the numbers are really doing what they could do to help shape the industry for the better, in my humble opinion. And I think that's wrong.
Brilliant. I'm really grateful for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you feel your message has got out there. If people want to get hold of you, how do they do that, please?
By all means, you can go to the Wiggywam platform, which is wiggywam.co.uk, or email me, silas@wiggywam.co.uk.
Brilliant. Well, everybody, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for listening. If you've got any comments, please leave them, share, like, do whatever you need to do. Until the next time, have a good one, everybody. Thank you.